In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for
Banter. Here we go. Ready to kick things off. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where we cover a true crime and/or historical topic of issues that were doomed to fail or subjects. And I'm Farz, joined here by Taylor. We are semi-awake.
You're
mostly
frozen.
awake.
You froze for me. Say that again. You lost me at subjects.
We cover subjects that are doomed to fail, and we are semi-tired, I think.
I feel like you made me a lot more tired than I was when I logged on 30 seconds ago.
Is that my
And you were like,
general voice and
"Oh,
attitude?
I was so tired," and I feel like you're making me tired.
You're literally like, you look like you're about to fall asleep. Your head is barely being supported.
I really feel like I could right now. I could probably just fall asleep for I'm a really good napper too. If you're like, we have an hour to nap, I'd be like, great, I'm in. And I would just do it. So if you
So
bring
lovely.
it up, I'm going to do it.
Especially now, because I don't know what it is, when that transition happens between hot weather and cold, and when it starts turning into
Yeah.
fall, it's just so much easier to just be sitting inside. Like right now, it is starting to get dark. It's about 52 degrees here, the coldest it's been in forever. And it's just it's just perfect. Stay at home, light up fireplace, and eat chili weather,
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. Also, the I spent some time outside today, planting some things and doing things before it gets too cold. But I'm like, yeah, all of a sudden it's about to get too cold to really do things, I guess.
Is it cold there right now?
No, I probably isn't cold based on other people's perception of what cold is. It's probably 70, honestly. And I'm
Okay,
acting like it's
yeah.
winter.
Yeah,
I don't think it's
okay.
cold. I think it's pretty nice. It's very, very sunny. It's beautiful. But yeah, I have some plans. We spent a lot of money at the Home Depot yesterday. I'm gonna paint part of our patio floor checkered, black and white checkers. So I bought a bunch
Yeah,
of concrete paint and I taped up the bathroom. I'm gonna paint some of the bathroom. I just felt like doing some home renovation stuff. But
that's fun.
maybe that's why I'm a little tired. Yeah,
That's
'cause
very
I've
fun.
given myself all these projects that I don't have time for, but I'm doing them anyway.
So I can kind of complain about the weather because it is not in the 70s here. It's like the very, very, it's about to be in the 40s. So still not
Ew.
terrible.
Oh God, no. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah, rainy and
So,
in the 40s. So, cool.
yuck.
Well, we can go ahead and kick things off. I think I go first today, right?
You do. You do.
Woo. Okay, do you want to let us know what you're sipping on?
Yep, my themed drink of the evening is just some red wine because we are once again going back to ancient Rome, and I just assumed that's the only thing you were able to drink there.
That's it?
Oh, and I guess
That
water because I had the aqueducts, but probably we just use most of it to make wine.
probably. I thought the reason
Lots
they
of wine.
drank a lot of wine was because wine was the safest thing to drink because there was alcohol in it.
I think there's a part of that with in the history of the world where water, so many opportunities for water to kill you, especially
Yeah.
when there's no sanitation and all those things. So I think there was I know that weak beer, was drank for breakfast because it had that little bit of whatever the fermenting process did, maybe got rid of some of the poop germs. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
I had
Definitely
that.
treated differently.
I did have a thought, one of those rare moments, the rare occasion when I have a thought earlier this weekend where I was thinking, do people in Mexico get insulted when we say you can't drink the water there? Is that kind of like an insult? I mean, I don't know if it's true or not.
No,
I never drank the water in Mexico. I don't know, but
it is true, but it's just but it's the same truth in the thing about time travel is you couldn't drink the water, you couldn't eat the food, you would die immediately. The thing that would kill you in time travel is the food. You know what I
I
mean?
know, but
If you went to
nobody says.
King Arthur's court, you couldn't, if you ate some whatever, you would die. And so I feel it's just if you grow up around that kind of, it's if you grow up around it, then you're okay. So if you always lived in Mexico and those places, you're fine, but it's just a new thing to other people, and that's what makes you sick, right?
Yeah, but nobody says you don't drink the water in Texas, you know?
Well, because probably the water in Texas isn't as bad, different bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like compared to like other
Okay. Yeah.
water,
Yeah, fair.
you
Fair
know.
point.
Um, I mean, Austin has had it's a fair amount of boil water alerts,
Austin has a
where you
lot
have
of
to
boiled
boil the
water.
water before using it.
Yeah.
So
And we're
there's
getting
that.
into
There's
that
not bad.
season. Yeah, we're definitely getting
Yeah,
into that season too. Good point.
yeah,
Very fair point. That's awesome.
yeah.
Are you actually drinking wine?
No, because I'm gonna go to the grocery store after this with the kids, so I should not be drinking before that.
Fair. It's very
You know.
responsible of you.
Yeah.
I am just
Thank
drinking
you.
Diet Coke because I just want to have a Diet Coke. Has nothing to do with my
Oh,
story at all.
I'm drinking Diet Coke too.
Oh my God,
I'm really drinking one too.
Jinx.
Oh my God, I love Diet Coke so much. Did I never tell you how I used to work at a hedge fund and one of my bosses went to like a investor meeting at the Coca-Cola factory in Atlanta and he brought me back a necklace that had it had like a little fake diamond and a heart that said I love Diet Coke.
That's so fun.
So
That's very
cute.
fun.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and kick us off then. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Are you prepared?
I am. I'm sad I can't see your face because we went off camera because you froze for a second, but I'll imagine your face.
I can turn it back on. I think it's your internet.
But it doesn't say me.
It doesn't say
So
me
usually
either.
it'll say you're okay, fine. Let's try it. And if you freeze, then I'll turn it off.
Deal. Deal. Here's my
Okay.
face. Big
Okay.
old forehead.
Hi.
So you try not to laugh.
Well, I laughed. That was funny. And I have a big forehead too. And I was also laughing that you're wearing a long sleeve shirt because you're usually in a tank top. So it's also funny.
So here's a secret. I went to yoga this morning and
Are you wearing a necklace?
no, this is a shot collar because Luna's acting up.
Got it.
Yeah. No, I went to yoga this morning, and after yoga, I wore this hoodie because I was like drenched in sweat and it's cold outside. And then I came home and I started watching TV and I laid down and I fell asleep and I woke up for this and totally forgot to like take a shower. So that's why I'm wearing this.
That's cool. I'm
There
wearing
you
my
go.
painting clothes.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you ready?
I am.
Great. So I've been recently getting interested more and more in engineering related disasters. And
Ooh.
I've sort of talked about this before in the past. So I covered two Ocean Gate related disasters, which were the Byford Dolphin and the Cursed Submarine a while ago, if you recall.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm also getting into the concept of ripping things off that you start, Taylor. And so I'm going to follow in your volcanologist footpath steps,
How dare
and I want to start a 5-part series about deadly engineering disasters.
you? Ooh, very fun.
Right?
I love it.
It, it and I thought of it all myself after seeing what you did, and then
I'm so
copying
proud
it
of you.
and doing
I
it.
can't wait to hear. Yay.
Yes. So
Yay for engineering disasters.
hell yeah. So today I'm going to start part one of that series. And I'm going to cover something that I was kind of surprised to learn. The topic I'm going to cover is the second deadliest building collapse in US history, only second to the Twin Towers. And it
Right.
is the deadliest non-deliberate collapse of a building ever, or in the history of the US.
Cool.
Yeah. So usually for the topic of this show, we talk about two things that came together and disaster and calamity struck. In my story today, it's about two things that did not come together that should have come together. And the fact that they did not come together is why disaster struck. Today,
Got it.
we'll be discussing the Kansas City Hyatt Regency disaster. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I got one. Got one that you're familiar with.
You what?
I got
Yeah,
one you're
yeah,
familiar
yeah.
with.
No, I have, and I remember, I feel like at one point I was like at work at the job that we shared, and I was Googling pictures of um this story, and there's a lot of very vivid pictures of dead bodies, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that later.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
excited. Go.
it's bad.
Terrifying. Go ahead. So fun.
So this disaster occurred in 1981, but we're going to start with the initial background of kind of the major players of what was going on here. So construction kicked
Hmm.
off in 1978 in Kansas City, Missouri, and the parties involved, this is going to be the most relevant part here. The parties involved, four of them that are important. One is the Crown Center Redevelopment Corporation. So this was a subsidiary of Hallmark Cars,
Hmm.
which is one of the biggest employers in Kansas City. Their HQ is there. And
Oh.
they bought up about 85 acres of downtown Kansas City, which apparently at this time or before this time was kind of a shithole. And they were trying to turn it into like a fun, cool, interesting thing because Hallmark's like a family brand. It's like it's one of
Hmm.
those things that they didn't want to be associated with like grime and all that stuff, and so they wanted to basically put their corporate dollars towards developing the center.
Farce. Have you seen, I'm laughing a lot because I know the answer is no, the musical Oklahoma?
Of course, I have not seen the musical Oklahoma.
Okay, then this is a rhetorical question, and it's for everyone else. But there's a part in Oklahoma where like they're up there and like they're in these like frontier homesteading small towns, and one of the guys goes to Kansas City and he comes back and he sings a song about how amazing Kansas City is, and he goes, everything's up to date in Kansas City. They've gone about as far as they can go. They went and built the skyscraper 7 stories high, about as high as people ought to go. You're welcome. So I cannot think about Kansas City without thinking everything's up to date in Kansas City.
When did
You're
that song
welcome.
come out,
You
or when did
know.
that play come out?
Oh my God, like the 1950.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So it's interesting because like there was a bit of like a
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 1931.
1931. So
Oh,
Kansas City did
1943. Anyway, keep going.
whatever, same wheelhouse.
No, doesn't matter.
So Kansas City did have like this economic boom happening, and they were kind of left behind. The other cities, they just didn't invest in the city itself as much. And like this whole thing
Hmm.
that Hallmark did was supposed to be the biggest part of like that investment. It's interesting. I looked this up now, and the vibe of this general area is very like Universal City Walk, you know? So like
Hmm. Hmm.
it's almost like a destination now. So like there's a Legoland, there's a really cool aquarium looking thing, there's a ice skating
That's cool.
rink, there's places for kids to go create cards for them. Like, it's just like a very family oriented, vibrant part of the town now, part of the country now.
Hmm.
But at
Hmm.
that time, this redevelopment center, this corporation that Hallmark established, was the entity that was responsible for doing this. And part of what they did
Hmm.
was grant out the license to a hotel in a 40-story hotel to Hyatt, which at that time was known as kind of like the haughty brand. Like it was like one of the nicer brands of hotels. I don't know where they rank now. I think they're
Hmm.
probably like still somewhere up there. But yeah, that was why
Yeah.
they did it, was because they were like, we want to be associated with like glitz and glamour, and Hyatt is the glitziest and glamorous spot.
Hmm.
There was a engineering firm called Gillum and Associates, run by the head engineer named Jack D. Gillum, and they were the structural engineering firm that was hired to build the hotel itself.
Hmm.
There was Havens Steel, and this was a steel fabricator who was contracted out by Gillum to manufacture the steel components required in construction of the building based on the architectural requirements that Gillum and Associates
Hmm.
provided them. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start by painting a bit of a picture of how the building was designed. You've already seen the picture, so you already know what's going on. So this is for the people who are listening, which I guess is why we're doing the show anyways.
Yeah.
So
It's not just for me.
it's not just for you. So the most important and relevant part of this topic is the lobby area. So this is like the late 70s, the era of like big atriums. So you'd walk into a
Hmm.
hotel, and in this case, 4 stories of the lobby was just an atrium, like this giant open space. And for the most part, you'd have the hotel rooms in the periphery, like on the perimeter of the atrium, and then above it on the regular
Hmm.
floors. That's the way that it was kind of designed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the design elements that Hyatt and Gilliam and Associates chose to really make this design stand out had to do with a floating or several floating walkways that ran the length of the atrium north to south and connected the second, third, and fourth floors. So on two sides, there's
Hmm.
rooms, and there's these giant walkways that are 120 feet across each that gives you access to them essentially.
Hmm.
The floating part of this is the problematic part. And the way they made it seem like it was floating was that the walkways weren't, they didn't have piers that they sat on the way that most walkways do. They were suspended from the ceiling.
Hmm. It kind of reminds me, now that you say that, remember how I know you've seen the Harry Potter movies, correct?
I've, yes, of
So,
course.
okay, great. Just there's something that you've seen. But how like, how the staircases always like move in there and you're like,
Yeah,
that is so dangerous. Why would you
yeah.
ever have staircases that move like that? It makes no sense. But,
I've recently unlocked a new spell in the Hogwarts Legacy game where I can do that, where I can move things around like that with my wand. It's
ooh,
fun.
nice.
Yes,
Dangerous.
I'm a very, very talented wizard. So, as I mentioned, there's three walkways that did this. So there was a walkway, there was a second floor walkway, a third floor walkway, and a fourth floor walkway. The third floor walkway is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Third floor walkway has nothing to do with any of this because that was kind of off the side. It was doing its own thing. It's not a part of this whole gang of
Hmm.
walkways. We're only dealing with walkways two and four. And for the purpose of understanding how they're aligned, walkway two is underneath walkway four. They're directly stacked on top of each other with two floors separating them.
Hmm.
Cool.
Hmm. Yep.
Like I said, each walkway 120 feet long. Each walkway weighed about 64,000 pounds. It was comprised of steel beams, girders as they're called, as well as glass and carpet and all the other stuff that goes on top of that. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
2 years after construction began, the hotel officially opened on July 1st, 1980. The Hyatt would host what's called private tea dance parties every Friday in the lobby, which I actually didn't even know what a tea dance was. I looked this up and it actually said there was two sources on this. One source says that it's a gay singles mixer, which I don't think this was because it was like Kansas City in like the 1980s.
Yeah.
And then the other one is like it's just like a fancy tea party. It's like a fancy tea and coffee party thing. I don't know. Like it
Yeah.
looks like
It
everybody's
sounds fun.
dressed
It's like a
formal.
dance. Yeah, I feel like a lot of like older people you go and you like, have some drinks as a band. It's just like a dance.
Yeah,
This
seems
is
fun. Seems
whatever.
fun. Seems
Yeah.
lovely.
It seems fun.
In the pictures that you see, you can see that there's like big posters and flyers up about this party. And so, anyways, so
Yeah.
about a year after the opening of this hotel, we're looking at Friday, July 17th, 1981. Roughly 1,600 people came to the Hyatt for this tea dance party. So,
Yeah.
based on eyewitness statements, about 40 people were standing on walkway two, about 20 people were standing on walkway four. Eyewitnesses state that around 7 o'clock, 7:05 is the exact time they say it happened. And it sucks because the dance was supposed to be over at 8. But anyways, at 7:05
Ugh.
p.m., there was a loud cracking sound, and walkway 4 dropped several inches. It held there for a few seconds, and then it fell completely 2 stories down on top of walkway 2, and then both of them crashed to the first floor atrium level. So
Which one had 40 people on it?
walkway 2.
Did Walkway 4 have people on it?
Yeah, Walkway 4 had approximately 20 people, and Walkway 2 had about
Okay.
40 people on it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the people who were underneath Walkway 2, or the people who were on Walkway 2, were killed immediately. Obviously, like if you
Yeah.
picture it.
Yeah.
Only 29 people were eventually pulled from the rubble. In total, about 114 people were killed, and about over 200 were injured. The
Oh
entire
God.
lobby basically turned into this makeshift recovery zone. There were so many problems that I
Hmm.
would never have expected to arise. So, for example, when the walkways fell, they ruptured water lines for the sprinkler system, and so the first floor started flooding. And so there was people. There was
Ugh.
one guy named Mark Williams. This story's awful. This guy apparently, what happened to him was when he was underneath. He was like, I don't know where he was in terms of like the orientation. Somehow, some way,
Yeah.
he was underneath all this rubble. What happened was he did the split completely breaking and
Oh my God.
dislocating both of his legs. He's on the ground, like just with these shattered, useless appendages, and he almost drowned because the sprinkler system was running and it was like flooding this first floor. That guy
Oh my
stayed in that
God.
full split position for 9 hours until he was rescued. I don't know how you don't go into shock. I think I legitimately be like, dude, like after like hour, not even hour, after like 20 minutes, like, dude, just someone put a bullet in my head. Like, please, like, this is.
There is nothing more terrifying to me than being in a collapsed building or like a
So
collapsed thing,
awful.
you know?
Yeah, I wrote
Ugh.
here. I wrote here that the stories that I read, like, it all reminded me of Oklahoma City. Like every detail we read
Yeah,
of like what happened in Oklahoma City, that's exactly what this was. Was like the other thing I read that was interesting was that these walkways were fucking huge. And they had like first responders had no means of moving them. All they were using like car jacks. Like car
right.
jacks can't support 70,000 pounds. Like they're not made
Oh
for
my
that.
God.
And
Yeah.
so one thing that was really interesting was that the community in Kansas City like completely came together around this. So the first responders reached out to construction firms and asking, I mean, this is like 7 p.m. on a Friday. They're asking on people like, hey,
Oh my
we need
God.
help. All this equipment would come in, like forklifts and stuff like that to come in to kind of support this. But that also is what caused such a long delay in trying to get help to the 29 people that are underneath the rubble because they just didn't have the
Hmm.
equipment to do it.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was all these stories. They use a fucking chainsaw to amputate someone's leg underneath the rubble to get them out.
Mm, I
Nightmare.
hate that.
Like horror
I
show.
def ugh. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The conference space in the hotel basically turned into a makeshift morgue and a triage center. And yeah, this is what you mentioned. So if you look at, there's one photo of the lobby right after the collapse during the rescue operation,
Hmm.
and it's the one that has like a black forklift in the bottom right corner. And if you look at that picture
Hmm.
behind it, it is just a fucking pool of blood. Like these people were made into like just batter. Like it was
Right.
awful.
They were just smashed. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah, it was horrific.
Yeah.
One other thing that I listened to a podcast about this. One thing they raised was that at this time there was no concept of like post traumatic stress. Like it wasn't a thing, and there was no
Uh-huh.
counseling for people. And so this incident is one of the major reasons why it became a standard piece of practice for first responders to get access to psychological help and therapy after witnessing things like this because it was so bad.
Oh, you mean for specifically for the first responders? I bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Holy
yeah.
hell. Hmm.
And I read, so if you look at videos of this stuff on YouTube, you'll scroll down and you'll see all this stuff saying like, "Hey, my dad was a firefighter when this happened. I remember this. Like he still remembers it. He falls asleep and he can't fall. Like it is like these people
Oh,
were like really
yeah.
badly traumatized, obviously.
Oh my God, of course. Oh,
So the meat and potatoes of this really for me is like, how did this end up happening? So
yeah.
we go through that piece of it. So to understand how this happened, we're going to start with what the design was for these floating walkways. So each walkway was made using basically four 30-foot long pieces that were kind of put together and combined to make the entire 120-foot length. Each of these
Uh-huh.
pieces was put together using iron girders. So I mean, it's basically just giant iron bars that you'd imagine that you use for construction to put like a building together, right?
Yeah.
So there's several problems here. One of them was that these were C-shaped girders. So usually a lot of times you'll see girders and they look like an eye, for example. If you look at them from the side, they look like an eye. Or
Uh-huh.
in this case, they can also look like C's. So what they did was they would put
Uh-huh.
two of these girders side by side. They'd weld them together. So if you looked at it like head on, like you were looking through a telescope, it would look like a square, like a really thick square is what it would look like.
I
And so
see. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing
yeah,
these diagrams. Okay.
yeah, exactly. And so there's this hollow space in the middle, and that's kind of problem number one, which I'll come back to here in a moment. To
Even you telling
create,
me this about these girders makes me want to throw up.
I
Like I
know,
just feel nauseous.
I
Continue.
know, I know. It's like the other side of like terrifying true crime is building collapse.
Oh my God, I
So
never want to be on a bridge again. Keep going.
Titan bridges are on the topic list.
Oh my
So,
God.
regarding the floating illusion, the way it was supposed to work, where they were going to use these iron hanger rods that would run from the base of walkway 2 through the girders of walkway 4 up to the ceiling and be suspended from the ceiling. So they would be
Okay.
passing through the hollow part of the girder I just mentioned, and there would be nuts screwing them into the base of the girders on the floor above and below. Make sense?
Yes.
So picture one super long rod. That's how it would
Uh-huh.
work. Okay?
Right. And then it just like yes, I feel like that totally makes sense. Yeah.
So using this design, walkway 4 would only have to support its own weight because the weight of walkway 2 would be supported by the iron bars hooked up to the ceiling.
Okay.
So picture it this way. If me and you were on a rope and I'm higher up on the rope than you are, I'm not supporting your
Hmm.
weight and you're not supporting my weight. We're two totally separate entities weight wise on this rope. Make sense?
Right. Yeah,
And
let's never do that because I'm very bad at hanging on ropes.
do you remember what in elementary school they make you do the climb the rope thing in gym?
Honestly, if you were like, Taylor, you have to climb this rope right now or die, I would die. I physically cannot do it. Like, there's no way.
Yeah,
Absolutely not, ever. Never in my life.
I feel like gym class like didn't get the memo that like we were not of the
This is
generation that we're gonna be rope
impossible.
climbers. I
Oh my
think I
God,
broke my
this is
coccyx once when I tried to climb a rope in elementary school.
oh,
I was
never
a
worth it.
fat little kid though. I was a little tubbers. Thank
Oh,
God that's
oh.
over. So in February of 1979, mid-construction, Havens Steel decided to change the design of those rods, the one super long rod, from a single super long
Uh-huh.
rod to two smaller rods. The reason being that construction of one long rod would have been difficult since it needed to be fully threaded to allow the nut to be fastened at different intervals in between the walkways. And they
Uh-huh.
also said that because it's kind of like a delicate design, anyways, it is more likely to be damaged during assembly. So
Okay.
let's not do it that way. Instead, what they proposed was walkway 2 would have a rod running from its base to the iron girder in walkway 4. Then walkway 4 would have a rod running from its iron girder to the ceiling. So
Hmm.
the difference there that seems like not even that big of a deal is that using my rope analogy, in this hypothetical, the way that this is designed, you are no longer holding the rope. You are holding my leg. I am holding the rope. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, and that seems worse, right?
Yeah. It seems dramatically worse.
Yeah.
So one thing to note is that in this situation, this actually isn't up to the steel fabricator to check the integrity of this design change. That's up to the engineering firm in charge. So it was later revealed that only one phone call happened between Haven Steel and Gillum and Associates regarding this change, and that no calculations or review of the design was ever made. And basically, Gillum just rubber stamped this change and said, "Yep, let's move forward with it." What's interesting is that later on, Jack D. Gillum would state that this change was so obviously stupid that even a first year associate or first year architecture student should have been able to catch it. Like it was like very
Oh my
like
God.
anybody who saw was like, yeah, that's why it happened. That's exactly why it happened. It
Yeah.
is worth noting
Yeah.
that even with the original design, it was only 60% as strong as it should have been based on the building codes from Missouri at the time. With this update, it was
Oh,
30% as strong as it should have been for the building codes of the
oh my
design.
God.
Yeah. And remember, it went through the hollow part of the steel. So if you recall
Right.
earlier, what I mentioned was that walkway 4 dropped several inches, stopped, then dropped. What happened was it sheared the bolt from the weight of holding walkway 2, sheared the first part of this weld that it wasn't strong enough to hold anyways, fell down and caught on the second weld, and then obviously at that point it was just completely fucked and fell. So
Oh my God. I'm gonna have so many nightmares tonight. I want to start to cry.
yeah,
Continue.
it was bad. It was really bad. And what ended up happening was that everybody got dragged into lawsuits. In total, somewhere around $300 million worth of lawsuits were flinging around. There were some class actions ones, there were some individual ones, in the end, Gilman Associates was ultimately held grossly negligent and liable. They did not actually face criminal
Mhm.
charges. Their charges were more civil in nature. They ended up losing their engineering license, but no jail time was ultimately served by anybody. Hallmark is the one that got fucked the most. So Hallmark, I don't actually, I couldn't understand like why Hallmark was the one that was like Hallmark's not making decisions based on, they're not engineers, they're card manufacturers. Like they make
Right.
birthday cards, but they're the ones, or the Crown Center redevelopment, which is a part of Hallmark, it's a subsidiary. They're the ones who ended up paying the most. They ended up paying
Uh-huh.
about $140 million to victims and families, and it seems like Gillen Associates, their punishment was mostly just like you're never allowed to work ever again. Basically, is what it boiled down to.
Right.
Now it seems like Jack Gillum. Actually, Jack Gillum died in 2012. But up to that point, he was a frequent guest lecturer in engineering schools and colleges around the country. Basically, being like,
Uh-huh.
this is what happens. Like, this is like, it's God. What was the It was there was some saying I read that was like when a doctor fucks up, one person is killed. When an engineer fucks up, thousands of people can be killed. And like that's
Yeah,
fucking. I mean, I never
totally.
thought about it that way, but like, yeah,
That's
that's
true.
real. So
Absolutely. Oh.
yeah, so in total, they ended up paying $140 million out. About 3 months after the collapse, the hotels reopened, which like I would never walk it out. Like, I'm just like,
Wait,
fuck
is it still
this.
there? Is you can still stay there?
Yeah, it's called the Sheraton Kansas City at Crown Center now. It's a huge hotel. They
All right, good
expanded
to
it, they
know.
sold it. Yeah, like in the lobby really hasn't changed at all. What's changed is the walkways. The walkways are apparently now considered the strongest in the entire world. Like they basically poured like
They rebuilt them?
all yeah, they basically poured like all the cement that existed in the entire world into making these walkways. But like, yeah, like there's walkways still, except they're not suspended anymore. They actually have trusses underneath them to hold them up into place.
I just don't know why. I mean, I can't. There's so many ghosts there.
So many goes. It's like
So
the
many.
center. It's the center of this whole 85 acres. It's like but if you look at the pictures of it now, like it's been updated. There's some things that are like exact. So there's one part next to where the walkways fell, like to the left of where the walkways fell. There's this like weird indentation, like design element that does this thing, like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
like
yeah. I'm
V
looking
thing.
at that.
That's still there today.
That is so, I feel like you should change everything about it. Most importantly, never have walkways again. Like, cool, they're safe, but no.
So
Oh my
many
God.
ghosts, so many ghosts. Yeah, this was like a
Those
huge
poor
deal, and like
people.
there's a whole like side quest here that I started going down and was like, this is I'm not gonna track this all the way to the end. But apparently, the local newspaper, this was like basically all they covered, and they won like Pulitzer prizes for this for over the course of like nearly 2 years of like writing articles about what happened, the trial, everything. And people were fucking pissed. Like people in Kansas City were really, really pissed because ultimately the blame landed on the owner of everything, which was Hallmark. But Hallmark,
Right.
everybody worked at Hallmark, and so the people there were like,
Right.
we want to forget this. Like it's a weird cultural nightmare that we're all living through, but we want to forget this. And you guys are
Yeah.
continuously writing about it.
Yeah.
You're making our employer look bad, and it like ultimately they didn't even do anything. Like they're not approving architectural designs. Like they make cards. Like so all in all, yeah, horrible, horrible nightmare, horrible tragedy. Just never stand under floating walkways.
I read this, I feel like a long time ago, was reading about this, and I read a story of like a couple who was there with like their best friends, and they were all at the bar getting a glass of wine, and the couple was like, "Oh, our favorite song's playing. We're gonna go dance," and they went and danced, and they never saw them again. You
Yeah,
know, it was like they were 30 feet away, and then they were just like smashed.
so freaky, so
Oh
freaky,
my God, I hated it so much. Those pictures are horrifying. I mean, you're just
so
those things that happen
gory.
also in split seconds. Yeah, like a split second, you're fucking a puddle of blood.
It's literally that. Like you
Ugh.
are a puddle of blood. Like there's nothing left of you. It's so. I mean, that one picture is the one that gets me. The one with the forklift.
Um, yeah, yuck.
But But yeah, that is the first. Oh my God, this one's really bad too. This one's all the dried blood. Ugh. Yeah,
Ugh. I mean,
it's
the
all like
pictures, the carpets are covered in blood.
no,
You can
no.
Google it, America and Canada, and people listen to this. But yeah, oh my God. Yeah, the carpet's just blood. It's just covered in blood.
It's interesting because like at this time I was reading about like how the architectural standards and requirements were like kind of shady. So do you remember that building that came down in Miami? Like it just literally collapsed.
Yes,
So
absolutely awful. I hate it. Thank you. Ugh, ugh.
those buildings that were all built in like the 70s and like early 80s, like they were not subject to the same review standard as buildings are
Yeah.
today. There's a whole host of them. One thing I didn't bring up here is that before this accident happened, as the building was being constructed, the fucking roof fell in. So the roof also didn't
Really?
have sufficient supports. The roof caved in. Gilman Associates agreed to tack on to their contract to run another inspection of the roof and to build a new roof, and that was it. They didn't inspect anything else. No other parts of the design was inspected after this roof collapsed, but that also was a thing. Like things, I don't know. It was just really easy going back then. It seems like
Well,
we
there's
could have
just like
been
so many
engineers.
opportunities. There's so many opportunities to have like one little thing that if no one's like overseeing the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like I feel like this is not 100% true, but when the Brooklyn Bridge was being built, they like did half of it with like 50% the strength that they should have used until someone finally noticed and made them change it. But like companies are going to be like, "Oh, this makes it just a little bit easier." But if like a bunch of people are like, "This will be a little bit easier," then the whole thing's going to fall apart, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
and it
seems
seems like
like
that was the case here.
there's no oversight. Yeah. Oh, I
Freaky.
feel so sad for all these old people at this old people dance.
I know.
You're just
I mean,
at
I
old
don't know.
people
I kind of
dance.
feel worse for the guy that was like doing the splits for 9 hours.
Did anyone actually drown? I'm looking at them.
No, nobody drowned. No, because when they
That's
realized what
good.
was happening, what I don't remember who the person's name was. When they realized like, oh, there's still people here and they're gonna drown, they bulldozed like part of the building to let all the water out, and it was just like a
Uh-huh.
rash decision. Like we gotta get this water out of here, and so they just bulldozed it to prevent it. But he was like very close to drowning before somebody realized it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's horrible. I'm excited for four more horrible stories and to never go into a building again or
engineering
sleep
stuff
or do
freaks me
anything.
out.
So scary. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where we landed. Taylor and I are going to have a very, very fun update for folks going into the holiday season that we are not going to reveal yet, but it's going to be very, very fun and very interesting and cool.
Yeah.
And I think y'all are
We
going
got
to
some
like
fun
it.
stuff coming up.
We got some fun stuff coming up. And Taylor, do we have any announcements before we kick off and restart?
Yeah, well, when our good friend Nadine from Canada, who is one of our first people who emailed us, she offered to send us voice clips of her saying French words because we do a terrible job, which is super nice. Um, thank you, Nadine. We will definitely reach out to you for that. Super nice.
If we could find someone that could also do that for Russian names, that would be great.
That'd be great. Yeah. That'd be great. That'd be awesome. I know someone I know people who speak Russian. I can make some calls,
Okay, all right.
text some people.
We
Yeah.
can pull that card out whenever we can. Sweet. So we'll
Yeah.
go ahead and kick things off. We'll rejoin y'all on Wednesday, and as usual, please do write, subscribe, do all the things. All of our socials are at Doomed to Fail Pod or at Doomed to Fail Pod, or
Yep.
our email is doomedtofailpod@gmail.com. We actually love to get those and read those, so please do write in. Let us know your thoughts.
We do. Yeah. Thank you.
Sweet.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Farz.
Taylor.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, all.